Hello and welcome to the Swan Song Project Podcast. My name is Ben Buddy Slack and I'm the founder of the Swan Song Project and the host of this podcast. The Swan Song Project is a charity. We're based here in Leeds, England, and we help people who are facing the end of their lives or dealing with bereavement to write and record an original song. We believe in celebrating lives, making memories and leaving legacies. If you'd like to find out more about the charity, you can visit our website, which is swansongproject.co.uk. The podcast features songwriters. Each episode of a different songwriter on. I asked them to share with us one of their songs. We have a chat about how they wrote it. I asked them to share a songwriting tip, and I also asked them to share a song that's meaningful to them in some way relating to bereavement. This episode features Odetta Hartman. Odetta's an American singer-songwriter and has written some really interesting songs. I really like her work. And coincidentally, her new album is called Swan Songs, so that was a nice coincidence. I think you're really going to enjoy the episode. If you do, please like, share and subscribe to the podcast. We're really trying to grow it and we've got lots more great guests coming up that you're not going to want to miss. But without further ado, here is Odetta Hartman on the Swan Song Project Podcast. Enjoy. Okay, today I'm here with Odetta Hartman. Thanks for joining me, Odetta.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, really looking forward to talking to you. And we've got a special guest, Zorabella, here as well.
Yes.
I think Zorabella is officially the youngest guest we've had on the podcast. Yeah. So she's got some good songwriting advice for us.
Oh, definitely. She's got bars already.
Yeah. For anyone new to the podcast, this is the Swan Song Podcast. Every episode I have a different songwriter on. We do it in three sections. So first, we're going to have one of Odetta's songs. We're going to have a chat about how she wrote it. And then section 2, I'll ask Odetta for a songwriting tip. And in section 3, we're going to talk about a song that's meaningful to Odetta in some way relating to bereavement. So over to you, Odetta. Which song of yours have you chosen to talk to us about today?
I have selected a song for my first record, 222. It's called Bato Nebo. And it's got a story that I think is on theme with this amazing project. So I wanted to share that with you.
Brilliant, thank you. So let's have a listen to Bato Nebo now, and then we'll have a chat about writing it.
It's true, I could have done better, but I won't be believed to fully take the blame. You came into my body like a spirit, so I have determined your proper name. Here I offer these devotions to appear. Now please, that it could be built around me, so I can drown out this supernatural scream. Set me free.
And it's Botanebo, is that how you pronounce it?
Yes,
Yeah,
Batonebo. Yeah,
Botanebo.
it's a Georgian word,
Ah, cool.
and it comes from Georgian tradition where the women and the healers of the town would go and visit the sickbed of an invalid, and they would sing these special songs and bring roses and violets and kind of decorate the room. And it was believed that if somebody got sick, it was because a bad spirit had inhabited their body and was making them fall ill. So the power of the song would be to expel the spirit, which is called the batonebo, from the person's body, and then that was a way to heal them from their sickness.
Wow. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, it's a good stuff. So the Botanebo is that's the spirit, and then they
That's the
sing,
spirit.
and then they sing the song to get rid of the Botanebo.
Yes. And I learned about that tradition from a very talented singer named Eva Selena, who has like group singing classes focusing on Balkan music. And this particular song that she taught us was from Georgian culture. And I had this melody that was stuck in my head for many years over an A minor chord. And it was this kind of mournful whistle or horn trumpet line that was just kind of always floating back through my head. And I had the whole chord structure of a song written, but I never knew what it was about. I never knew what the words were going to be. And I instantly, once I learned about this batonebo, right after the class, I was on my porch. I remember sitting in the sunshine playing those chords, and just all the words just came out all at the same time. It was like this lightning strike of inspiration, and it was one of those kind of wonderful moments when you've been sitting on something and patient, like, oh, it's fermenting, it'll come eventually when the moment is right. And then it just all came together, and it's one of my favorite songs to sing and to perform. I feel like it kind of sets the tone in a room, and I like to say that it's our own way of sort of cleansing the space if there's any evil spirits that have come in. And I've always been interested in how music and healing are tied together, so it's a very special composition for me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very powerful song. Yeah, really kind of affecting. It really kind of, it really has an impact on you, doesn't it? It's not I wouldn't say it's an ignorable song. Like, I mean, that's not a compliment for any song, is it, to be ignorable? But some songs where you can kind of like just listen to it in the background. But this one really kind of feels like it grabs you. Yeah. So you said you had the music, or you had did you have the whole music, the chord structure, and the melody
I had
beforehand?
the chords and the melody for the chorus,
Maybe for the chorus.
and that sort of ba ba da ba ba was just always like floating through my mind for years. And then the chorus came after I learned this batonebo. It's a real other song. It's like a special song that they sing, kind of like in ayahuasca ceremonies. They have certain songs that they're singing in those spaces, and it just kind of fit in with the with the melody. And then all the verses just came pouring out as well. And I feel like that's when you've really made a hit, when it just comes very naturally and you don't have to think so much about it, and it's just really flowing.
Yeah.
So
Is that how you is that how you write regularly? Of like have different bits of music that then things come back to when you get inspiration, or
it's
does it vary a lot?
different, honestly. And this was kind of a beautiful moment where the structure was already there and I was just kind of waiting for the subject. Sometimes a song will spring out of like one word that I think is interesting. Another song I was considering sharing is called Widow's Peak. And a word that can kind of evoke an image often is what will inspire a whole mood. And so for that one, I was just like, yeah, the word widow's peak, obviously it's like your hairline, but it was on these old buildings where a widow or a woman would be standing on her balcony overlooking the sea, waiting for her sailor husband to come home. And oftentimes they were widows. And I just, that sort of image of like a lonely woman looking out over yonder was really affecting for me. And so I have a whole song that's kind of about that. And then there are other songs where the lyrics come first. And then I have to kind of figure out what the chords are going to be. And sometimes they come in pieces, or I have like one verse. My baby is showing an early proclivity for wires. She might be a sound like a front house team. She's going after the cables. Yeah, so there's a song that I've been working on right now, which is another kind of case of like, I had a verse that I wrote years ago, and then I was working on another verse that I didn't realize they were actually in the same chord progression. And I was like, oh, these are two puzzle pieces that could fit together and kind of are in the same mood. And so that's also fun too. And it's a good testament to just kind of like making sure you keep your notes going. And, yeah, you never know what's going to kind of float out from the ether.
Yeah. Are you someone, are you always writing? Are you someone who's like kind of always working on stuff and like keeping these ideas? Do you have a system for making sure that you keep these little bits and pieces?
Well, I am an obsessive voice note recorder.
Yeah.
Been really, really helpful. So if I'm just sort of walking and something comes into my ear, I can just kind of sing it into there. And sometimes I'll forget, and then I kind of go back and I'm like, oh, that was cool. I actually had a cool serendipitous situation where I didn't know that the record was going to be called Swan Songs before it all came together. And then I was going through my voice notes looking for like a sample or kind of like an early version of one of the songs, and I stumbled on this, literally just me singing walking down the street, and there was a lyric about Swan Song, and I had completely forgotten about it. So that was like a little special Easter egg that came with the voice notes, and then journals. I wish I could be a daily morning pages person, but with an infant, it's been a little bit to find the time for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, we figure it out in our fits and spurts.
Yeah. As Odetta mentioned there, her new album is called Swan Songs, which comes out in March. Is it March 18th or so? 22nd. Yeah, so I'll put all the links to in the description where you can listen to that when it comes out. Yeah, so what was is there a song on it called Swan Songs, or was
there's no song called Swan Songs. That's just kind of the general theme of the project. It comes from, there's a few different, I'm gonna get her into a zone where she will be a little bit of a better listener here. So my name is Odetta, and I take after the folk singer Odetta Holmes, but also my mother was a ballerina, and one of her favorite ballets was Swan Lake. And if you're familiar with that, there are these two lead characters, and there's the white swan and the black swan, and their names are Odette and Odile. So that kind of became the theme and the thesis of the project, constantly thinking about the kind of the light and the dark, the shadow selves, the kind of evil twin aspect. of that, and that's also reflected in the visuals of the cover is in black and white. So the swan is very much nodding to that, and yeah.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing the album. There's a couple of tracks out from it already, isn't there? I'm looking forward to hearing the rest of it. And so the Bonebo song we've been talking about was from 2015, was it, that album came out?
Yeah, so that's from my first record called 222.
Yeah. Are there any main ways your songwriting is different now with the songs on this album compared to the songs then, do you think?
That's a good question. I think what has evolved is the production, and this record, Swan Songs, was demoed before the pandemic. So we had like a couple of little sketches, and then we were planning to really go for it in February 2020. So we had to make a very quick pivot to producing the record remotely. And I worked with two of my best friends from college, Alex Friedman and Wyatt Burtz. And it's actually both of their first project producing. We had been playing in bands together. So it was very much an education for all of us to figure out how to collaborate and work together and to do it remotely. And the effect of that was that we had to lean very heavily on digital instruments because we weren't actually in a room playing. I play string instruments, so I play violin, guitar, banjo, ukulele, whatever else, mandolin I think is on there. And those two guys are drummers. So we had to use a lot of synthesizers and computers and digital production to make the project. And the result is something that sounds a little bit more like it's skewing to like hyper pop as opposed to the sort of like experimental country Americana that I had been working on before. There's definitely still elements of that. My favorite example is that this song, actually, the next single is called Winter Constellations, and I wrote it on the banjo. And I had the verses and kind of the choruses that I've been workshopping, and I've been performing it for years on the banjo. And then because I didn't have a state-of-the-art instrument or recording studio or microphones or anything during the pandemic at home, I just felt like the banjo didn't sound great on the track. So what we ended up doing was feeding the audio file of the banjo recording into a Moog synthesizer and then outputting MIDI from that. And then we kind of scrolled through all the different keyboard sounds and ended up on one that is called balalaika, actually. So it's like another string instrument, but it was this very warm, just kind of ethereal sound. And I felt like, oh, this is the mood that I'm going for in the song. And so we replaced the banjo track. And so if you're hearing that single now, you're probably not gonna realize that it originated as a banjo. And I've never done that before. I've never basically used my instrument as a remote control for a synthesizer. And that kind of was like a aha moment, like, oh, this is a new palette that we can play with. And then because we had changed out the kind of primary instrument accompaniment, it inspired me to add a bridge, which I had never had on that song, even though I performed it for years. And so that was a really kind of surprising and exciting moment in the process as well. Like, oh, now that I'm hearing it with this different soundscape, it's inspiring a whole new chapter of this story. And that's one of my favorite moments on the record, is actually this little bridge that kind of explodes into like a 80s like Phil Collins drum fill, and it goes into a whole different journey. So yeah, that was part of this process that was totally different from the last few records.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. And yeah, it's kind of Was it strange having, hearing, I guess, adjusting to new versions of songs when there were songs that you've done for quite a long time in a particular version? I know this happens to a lot of people in the studio where, like, you might have, and particularly what you say when you bringing different instruments in than you're used to hearing it on. But it sounds like it's been a positive thing for inspiring different ideas for the songs.
Totally. And actually this project, because we kind of had the luxury of time, and we were just like, it was just the pandemic, and thank goodness we had something to work on and collaborate and make and kind of focus our energy on. We ended up doing so many different versions of every song, and that also we would use the theme of the Black Swan as well. It's like, okay, so here's one acoustic version of the song. What would the evil twin sound like? And then we would like absolute bonkers bananas, like synth crazy drum, and we would take it to like the furthest edge of the pasture we could, and then rein it back in. And after those experiments, okay, well, actually this bass is really cool from like the weird version. Let's bring that in, and then kind of Frankensteining all of these pieces together helped us come to the final versions, which sounded nothing like the demo. It was like anything that I thought it was going to be. And that's a really exciting part of the process, when you can surprise yourself and make those discoveries along the way, and you kind of let go of any preconceived notions of like, oh yeah, do it this way. It's going to be a country song. Actually, no, it's going to be like an A.G. Cook song.
Yeah, that does sound like a lot of fun. That sounds like a really fun way of doing it. And I like the idea of let's push it really far and then see find the set, like a pendulum, I guess. Let's see if it's how far it swings that way before we find the point that we like.
Yes, God bless my manager and label. Like, and I'm like, oh, like we made this like new version. And what do you think? Like, okay. And yeah, they were very patient through all of the experiments and the different flavors that we brought to them.
Yeah. And so you mentioned then a little bit about having preconceived ideas for songs. When you write songs from the start, do you often have like an idea of I'm gonna write a country-esque song, I'm gonna write a folky type song, or is it very much just let's just see what happens and you see what comes out?
Kind of both. I think the nature of playing the banjo is that things tend to just automatically sound kind of country and folky. But I love using the banjo as a writing tool. It's a very intuitive string instrument. And so even if it kind of starts out as a bluegrass tune, it can, like, I have an EP, actually, unannounced EP. I'm spilling the beans here.
Exclusive.
A couple of songs that started as like country or kind of bluegrass, and then through the production process ended up kind of going more into like a rock and roll, like there's a rock bridge. So yeah, I think I've always been the kind of writer and musician that takes a lot of inspiration from different genres, and I'm interested in the magic of the mix. And so I admire people that can kind of like stick in one lane and it's very cohesive, and it's but that's just kind of I've always been like, let's add the salt and the pepper and the curry and all the different so I think this record I was inspired by the country music wisdom, to like a good song is made of 3 chords and the truth. And so I try to always kind of come back to that. It's like, don't overcomplicate it. Don't get in your head too much, and just speak from the heart. And it's okay if you just have 2 chords, even. You don't even need 3 chords. You can just do 2 chords.
3 chords is a luxury.
Yeah, one of my favorite songs. And that's a really good kind of representation of the Black Swan, White Swan dichotomy, is called Good Socks. and that's just 2 chords, and it's a love song, and it can sound like a pop song, it can sound like a country song, it can sound like a wedding dance song, it can kind of be whatever. And I also love that when you can like dress up a song in a tutu or like in different outfits that will still kind of make an impact.
Yeah. And is it do you have a strong sense of like feel of what you're I guess one of the things that I'm always interested in is when people how people know when songs are finished, because obviously you can just keep playing around with things. But for you, is it like a sense of I think you mentioned at one point about like the feel of something. Is that when you know something's done when is like is it a feeling or is it like a is there anything you can say about how you know when something's finished?
Something's done. I would encourage songwriters to sit it out. So if you feel something coming, sit with it. Oftentimes, if you get distracted and go get a glass of water or go check your Instagram or whatever, you kind of lose it. So for me, it's very important to just stick with it and do like a full session, even if it doesn't feel like at the end of that it's done. But that for that moment when you're flowing, just letting that be uninterrupted and unimpeded, and then you can tinker with it. But I often find that my best ideas come in that first session, and that if I'm sort of like twiddling and tinkering, sometimes you can get lost in the sauce. Sorabella really wants to sing.
Yeah. You disagree with that bit, you do it differently.
Yeah. And like I said, like with that song Winter Constellations, I thought it was done. And then this bridge kind of surprised me and came out of nowhere. That actually happened with another song on the record as well, where I had just like a bridge come through the recording process. So yeah, how do you know when it's done? I guess it's just a feeling. I guess when you feel writing for me is very cathartic. So when that feeling has passed through you, you feel like you've processed it and digested it, and you've really squeezed it out for, like wringing out the towel of all the drops. You feel like, okay, now there's like a sense of relief. Like I've just been crying for 3 hours.
Yeah.
And you then can take a deep breath and be like, okay, I feel better now.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds like a good way of describing it. Yeah. Do you so obviously we talked with Bataneba, you talked about having the musical idea for quite a while and then hearing that story and being really inspired and knowing that was going to fit with that. Are there any other like consistent patterns or things of ways you work? Do your lyrics tend to be, do you write lyrics separately, or is it like you have the musical ideas and lyrics just come out of you, or is it, do you have like a radar, I guess, for stories and influence and things that then you then want to tell through a story?
Yeah, so the next project that I'm working on, I have a big theme that I'm looking to discover, and I am hoping that it's actually going to be a bunch of co-writes, which I've never done.
Nice.
Or done lyrics as a collaboration. And so I'm thinking about certain artists that I aspire to work with and kind of what lens or perspective they could bring to the table. And in that overarching theme, trickling down to the themes within it, what would kind of apply for each of those songwriters, and exploring, a little niche moment within that. And that is a totally different process than I've ever worked in before. And that's very exciting. It feels like, I'm growing in a new direction. yeah, I mean, I have little lyrics, little snippets of words, and I have snippets of sounds. And the best is when you can find the ones that meet up together. It's like magnets, kind of.
Yeah.
And I often find that I can kind of get into that flow state best when I am playing an instrument. So if I'm just kind of sitting on the porch and finger picking on my banjo. Often I say this, I also teach a lot, and I say this to my students that oftentimes a song idea will come because I've made a mistake. And I'm like playing some um this song that I wrote called The Ocean, which I was like learning one of those Beatles kind of jazzy songs I was learning on the banjo, and those were some new chord shapes that I had never played. Kind of, this was years ago, and yeah, and I kind of made the wrong shape, and it was technically a mistake, but I was like, oh, that's a really cool sound. Let me kind of explore that. And then I just was sort of twiddling around with that, and then it led into this other song being written. So yeah, when I'm talking to my students, I'm like, there's no such thing as a mistake. Just kind of let it rip, and it'll lead you somewhere. And kind of that's also a big part of my process, just like letting go, like being precious, and like obviously it's an incredibly vulnerable experience to put your feelings to words and music, and your memories or your life story, especially kind of in the context of the work that you do. It's incredibly precious. It's the most precious. If you're making this art, and it's so personal and it's so tender, but creation is messy, and you got to just do it quick and dirty and like let it all out. And I mean, kind of like birth, just you're about to go through it. It just all happens. It's all coming out, and then you have this incredible miracle that comes through. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you like that one, didn't you? Yeah, and I think what you're saying about making mistakes and how they often lead to really interesting things kind of fits with what you were telling you earlier on about the having a preconceived notion of a song. And because the more experience you get, the easier it is to be like, well, I'm going to write a song like this, and then just follow that formula, and like how that's going to sound. Whereas if you let yourself just play and then surprise yourself with what might start as mistakes, leads you in interesting directions, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. And also, structure is great, and following a roadmap, if you're a first time songwriter and you want to get into it, definitely like copying the structure of your favorite song, and whether that's verse, chorus, bridge, post chorus, whatever it is, having a kind of roadmap to guide you is really helpful also. So yeah, it's not all just like without rules, but you got to learn the rules to break the rules, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess that would be my advice. It's like, yeah, taking your inspiration from some kind of tried and true method, and then allowing yourself to wiggle around, color outside the lines.
Yeah, well, that's a really good way of describing it. Yeah, I love the learn the rules to break the rules. It's always good advice. So let's move to section 2 now, shall we? This is where I ask my guest for a songwriting tip, and what often happens in the podcast is we get lots of great tips during the first conversation. But I always like to ask for a specific songwriting tip. So what would your tip be for us today, Odetta?
Oh, I feel like I just gave a bunch, but let's see, a specific tip. To be gentle with yourself. I think that's important, especially for people just starting out. And like I just said, like it's such a vulnerable space to be in. And a lot of the kind of guidance that I give my students is we do a whole warm up in the beginning of our class where we do tongue twisters, which help us get silly, and they're kind of like, you end up making mistakes because they're designed to do that. And you say something funny. So we warm up our voices, we warm up our minds, we warm up our bodies, stretch, like getting loose. And then I always do an affirmation with my students or my co-collaborators, I'll say. And I think that's really important, is to just kind of believe in yourself and trust yourself, and to be gentle and loving and kind to yourself as you're experimenting and trying something new. It's a really brave task to give yourself.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And yeah, it's so easy to do the opposite, isn't it? To be really hard on yourself, and I think there's a common misconception that like the artists just produce their best work all the time, and that's just the way, rather than people not realizing how much every artist goes through writing loads and loads of stuff that they just never share with anybody, and that it's okay to write stuff that you don't think is good.
Yeah, I think we're often our own worst enemies, and then that gets in the way of being creative. And so just
Good rhythm there.
She does. I'm gonna get her maraca actually, because she something to play with.
Yeah, play on the next album.
Yeah. All right. Here we go.
Oh, there you go. You can show us how it's done.
She's ready. She was in my belly when I was on tour, and she's gonna come on tour with me in the UK in March.
Oh, nice.
Hi, I am Jill Hurst, and as a family we have worked with the Swan Song Project to write a song about my husband Paul, who was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's 3 years ago at the age of 59. As music has always been a love of Paul's, and each day continues to bring him joy, writing a song seemed a great way to celebrate what he means to us. We wanted to get over the beautiful, kind man he is, and our memories of our happy times together. This song is perfect, a powerful, poignant and upbeat tribute. Writing our song has been a fascinating and fun experience we will never forget, bringing us closer together as a family and giving us the opportunity to share our happy and sad emotions of this difficult journey. Please donate to the Swan Song Project to help more people write a swan song.
Yes, let's move into section 3 now, shall we? This is where I ask my guests to share with us a song that's meaningful to them in some way relating to bereavement. So which song have you chosen for us here, Odetta?
So I thought really hard about, all the beautiful kind of somber songs maybe, and ones that are very serious and distinguished. And the one that kind of kept coming back to me is this John Denver song, Take Me Home Country Roads. And I have this memory. My grandmother was from West Virginia, Mountain Mama. And my siblings and my mother and I, we were driving away from the funeral, and we had spent time with our family in West Virginia, and we were driving home. We were kind of like heading back into our lives after processing this moment of loss and grief all together. And we put that song on, and we were driving through the and we just all were singing along at the top of our lungs and crying, and it was just this really powerful catharsis, like I said before. And I have often thought about how music can help us to heal, and just how music and the brain are connected, and My other grandmother had Alzheimer's and at the end of her life. Woo! She wasn't totally with us, but always music impacted her. It was a way to connect with her. Yeah, I'm gonna put her down for a sec.
Okay.
And so this song just kind of was a way for us all to connect and sing together and have these memories come through. And I just have such a powerful memory for me of healing with my family. And then subsequently that song, I have been literally in Kenya. I have been all over the world, in Bali, and everybody knows that song.
Yeah.
And it's so you're getting a crash course on actually put her down for a second and she put her hand in a plant. So I found that song is just such a beautiful way to connect with community all around the world, and it always reminds me of my grandmother, and it reminds me of that time that I spent with my family. So even though it's not such a sad song, it's forever kind of embedded in that experience, and
Yeah.
connects me to my roots, and it connects me to so many people that don't even they've never been to West Virginia, but yeah, so that's my bereavement story.
Yeah, thank you for sharing it. Yeah, and it's because it's kind of got that longing, hasn't it? The which kind of, yeah, I can imagine relating to bereavement for people of particularly that feeling of connecting to your roots and taking me home. But I was going to ask, so it's kind of the way you described it, that's a really nice about it. But so sometimes when I've had people talk about particularly songs like that are so famous, and they've got a personal bereavement connection to them, sometimes people have said that then it surprises them because it's a song that you will hear all over the place. And then it can have it can bring up emotions in difficult times. But the way you've described it sounds like it's kind of a positive memory when that happens.
Yeah, definitely.
All right.
Positive memory. Yeah, I can understand how it might be triggering for others. And there's definitely some songs that get the waterworks going that I can only listen to in very specific circumstances and times. But I think also, it's important to kind of celebrate at the end, and to reflect on a life well lived, and that's part of the grief process as well.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, thanks a lot for your time, Odetta.
Thank you for your patience.
No, it's been great. It's nice to have an extra guest on as well. Sorry.
I look forward to learning more about the project and hearing some of the songs that have come out of the collaborations. And
yeah, thank you. And likewise with your album. So the new album, Swan Songs, comes out March 22nd. So I'll put the links in the description to the episodes. People can find it. And yeah, I hope, and Odetta's doing some dates here in the UK throughout March as well. So if anybody wants to catch you live, they can do.
Please, I'd love to meet you all.
Yeah, good stuff. And yeah, so thanks a lot, Odetta, and thanks for tuning in, everyone. I'll be back with another episode soon.
Cheers.